What's up, cuz? Welcome to CoCo Conjure. Here we talk about all things hoodoo, folklore, and spiritual journeys. My goal is to provide foundation for the novice and inspiration for the advanced practitioner. If you haven't guessed already, my name is CoCo. Thanks for engaging in conversation with me with your comments and your likes. Thanks for sticking around and subscribing. I appreciate you for tuning in. Guys, I'm overjoyed. Overjoyed. So today we're going to talk a little bit about Zora Neale Hurston's dive into the hoodoo scene down in New Orleans. While collecting African American folklore, she moved from Alabama, Florida, Louisiana, in late 1927 and thereafter. Hurston stumbled upon this conjure circuit, right? Which makes sense, honestly, because classic African American folklore deals with, the conjure man and workers and hoodoo stories, as we've seen so far, even in this podcast. Hurston, being not just a talented writer, but also like a anthropologist, took the time to record her comings and goings with the workers that she studied under or had conversations with in her book, Mules and Men. And that includes her initiation rites under her mentors. The initiation that interests me the most, the one that we're going to be talking about today, is one that she did with a man named Luke Turner. Down in New Orleans. By the time Hurston met up with Turner in New Orleans, Hurston says she had already been initiated under 5 other two heads, right? Initiation, ceremony and all. And she really wanted to meet Turner. There's a couple of people that she writes about. She doesn't write everything. Certain things she says is not meant to be told. Like, it's not hers to tell. But when she does write, she's definitely very fond of certain workers, and Turner seems to be one of them. Mostly because she was like on this hunt to find like this thread of work that was left by Marie Laveau, the conjure queen. She calls her the conjure queen. And Turner's reputation preceded him because Turner claimed that he was the nephew of Marie Laveau. Now, whether he was actually Laveau's blood nephew or family in spirit, like how you and I are family in spirit, that's in question, right? From what I can tell, Turner may have had access to how Laveau worked and claimed her style or school of work as his own, thus making Laveau a legendary ancestor, like an ancestor of note for him. Regardless, Hurston describes Turner as being sure of his power and seeking no students, right? So he was renowned where he was and well respected with his work, working in that Marie Laveau style, snakeskins and all. But he wasn't really seeking students. But after Hurston and Turner met and they got a feel for each other, as is described in her book, Mules and Men, Turner decides to take her on as a pupil. The following I'm going to read to you as an excerpt from Hurston's book, Mules and Men. It's her initiation working under Luke Turner, starting on page 198. Turner again made that gesture with his hands that meant the end. Then he sat in a dazed silence. My own spirits had been falling all during the terrible curse, and he did not have to tell me to be quiet this time. After a long period of waiting, I rose to go. The spirit says you come back tomorrow. He breathed as I passed his knees. I nodded that I had heard and went out. The next day, he began to prepare me for my initiation ceremony. For rest assured that no one may approach the altar without the crown, and none may wear the crown of power without preparation. It must be earned. And what is this crown of power? Nothing definite in material. Turner crowned me with a consecrated snakeskin. I have been crowned in other places with flowers, with ornamental paper, with cloth, with sycamore bark, with eggshells. It is the meaning, not the material, that counts. The crown without the preparation means no more than a college diploma without 4 years of work. This preparation period is akin to that of all mystics, clean living, even to clean thoughts, a sort of going to the wilderness in the spirit. The details do not matter. My 9 days being up and possessed of the 3 snake skins and the new underwear required, I entered Turner's house as an inmate to finish the last 3 days of my novitiate. Turner had become so sure of my fitness as a hoodoo doctor that he would accept no money from me except what was necessary to defray the actual costs of the ceremony. So, I ate my final meal before 6 o'clock of the evening before and went to bed for the last time with my right stocking on and my left leg bare. I entered the old pink stucco house in the Vaux Carré at 9 o'clock in the morning with a parcel of needed things. Turner placed this new underwear on the big altar, prepared the couch with the snakeskin cover upon which I was to lie for 3 days. With the help of other members of the College of Hoodoo Doctors called together to initiate me, the snakeskins I had brought were made into garments for me to wear. One was coiled into a high headpiece, the crown. One had loops attached to slip on my arms so that it could be worn as a shawl, and the other was made into a girdle for my loins. All places have significance. These garments were placed on the small altar in the corner. The throne of the snake, the great one, was called upon to enter the garments and dwell there. I was made ready, and at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, naked as I came into the world, I was stretched, face downwards, my navel to the snakeskin cover, and began my 3-day search for the spirit, that he might accept me or reject me according to his will. 3 days my body must lie silent and fasting, while my spirit went wherever spirits must go to seek answers never given to men as men. I could have no food, but a pitcher of water was placed on a small table at the head of the couch, that my spirit might not waste time in search of water, which should be spent in search of the power giver. The spirit must have water, and if none had been provided, it would have wandered in search of it, and evil spirits might attack it as it wandered about dangerous places. If it should be seriously injured, it might never return to me. For 69 hours, I lay there. I had 5 psychic experiences and awoke at last with no feeling of hunger, only one of exhaustion. I opened my eyes because Turner called to me. He stood before the great altar, dressed ceremoniously, 5 others with him. "Seeker, come," Turner called. I made to rise and go to him, but another laid his hand upon me lightly, restraining me from rising. "How must I come?" he asked in my behalf. "You must come to the spirit across running water," Turner answered in a sort of chant. So a tub was placed beside the bed. I was assisted to my feet and led to the tub. 2 men poured water into the tub while I stepped into it and out again on the other side. "She has crossed the dangerous stream in search of the spirit," the one spoke for me chanted. "The spirit does not know her name. What is she called?" "She has no name but what the spirit gives." "I see her conquering and accomplishing with lightning and making her road with thunder. She shall be called the rain bringer." I was stretched again upon the couch. Turner approached me with 2 brothers, one on either side of him. One held a small paintbrush dipped in yellow, the other bore one dipped in red. With ceremony, Turner painted the lightning symbol down my back from my right shoulder to my left hip. This was to be my sign forever. The Great One was to speak to me in storms. I was now dressed in the new underwear, and a white veil was placed over my head, covering my face, and I was seated in a chair. After I was dressed, a pair of eyes was painted on my cheeks as a sign that I could see in more ways than one. The sun was painted on my forehead. Many came into the room and performed ceremonial acts, but none spoke to me, nor could I speak to them while the veil covered my face. Turner cut the little finger of my right hand and caught the gushing blood in a wine cup. He added wine and mixed it with the blood. Then he and all the other 5 leaders let blood from themselves also and mixed it with wine in another glass. I was led to drink from the cup containing their mingled bloods, and each of them, in turn, beginning with Turner, drank mine. At high noon, I was seated at the splendid altar. It was dressed in the center with a huge communion candle with my name upon it set in sand, 5 large iced cakes in different colors, a plate of honey St. Joseph's bread, a plate of serpent-shaped breads, spinach and egg cakes fried in olive oil, breaded Chinese okra fried in olive oil, roast veal and wine, 2 huge yellow bouquets, 2 red bouquets, and 2 white bouquets, and 36 yellow tapers, and a bottle of holy water. Turner seated me and stood behind me with his ceremonial hat upon his head, and the crown of power in his hand. Spirit, I ask you to take her. Do you hear me, Spirit? Will you take her? Spirit, I want you to take her. She is worthy. He held the crown poised above my head for a full minute. A profound silence held the room. Then he lifted the veil from my face and let it fall behind my head and crowned me with power. He lit my candle for me, but from then on, I might be a candle lighter myself. All the candles were reverently lit. We all sat down and ate the feast. First, a glass of blessed oil was handed me by Turner. Drink this without tasting. I gulped it down, and he took the glass from my hand, took a sip of the little that remained. Then he handed it to the brother at his right, who did the same, until it went around the table. Eat first the spinach cakes, Turner exhorted, and we did. Then the meal began. It was full of joy and laughter, even though we knew that the final ceremony waited only for the good hour of 12 midnight. About 10 o'clock, we all piled into an old Studebaker sedan, all but Turner, who led us on a truck. Out road number 61, we rattled until a certain spot was reached. The truck was unloaded beside the road and sent back to town. It was a little after 11. The swamp was dismal and damp, but after some stumbly walking, we came into a little glade deep in the wood near the lake. A candle was burning at each of the 4 corners of the clearing, representing the 4 corners of the world and the 4 winds. I could hear the occasional slap, slap of the water. With a whispered chant, some twigs were gathered and tied into a broom. Some pine straw was collected. The sheets of typing paper I had been urged to bring were brought out, and 9 sheets were blessed and my petition written 9 times on each sheet by the light of a shaded lantern. The crate containing the black sheep was opened, and the sheep led forward into the center of the circle. He stood there, dazedly, while the chant of strange syllables rose. I asked Turner the words, but he replied that in good time I would know what to say. It was not to be taught, and if nothing came, to be silent. The head and withers of the sheep were stroked as the chanting went on. Turner became more and more voluble. At last, he seized the straw and stuffed some in the sheep's nostrils. The animal struggled. A knife flashed, and the sheep dropped to its knees, then fell prone with its mouth open in a weak cry. My petition was thrust into its throat that he might cry it to the Great One. The broom was seized and dipped in the blood from the slit throat, and the ground swept vigorously, back and forth, the length of the dying sheep. It was swept from the four winds toward the center. The sweeping went on as long as the blood gushed. Earth, the mother of the Great One and us all, has been appeased. With a sharp stick, Turner traced the outline of the sheep, and the digging commenced. The sheep was never touched. The ground was dug from under him so that his body dropped down into the hole. He was covered with 9 sheets of paper bearing the petition, and the earth heaped upon him. A white candle was set upon the grave, and we straggled back to the road and the Studebaker. I studied under Turner 5 months and learned all the Laveau routines. But in this book, all the works of any doctor cannot be given. However, we did perform several of Turner's own routines. One day, Turner told me that he had taught me all that he could, and he was quite satisfied with me. He wanted me to stay and work with him as a partner. He said that soon I would be in possession of the entire business, for the Spirit had spoken to him and told him that I was the last doctor that he would make. That 1 year and 79 days from then, he would die. He wanted me to stay with him to the end. It has been a great sorrow to me that I could not say yes. The first time I read this, I was brand new to all this hoodoo stuff. Like, I knew the granny cures and I had my hands in the soil with my garden, but that's not the same. Like, I could dress a candle, but this was the first time I had ever read hoodoo being performed in this way. A way that I honestly thought was only reserved for like ceremonial magic rites, and in a way that also involved no scripture, This was a spiritual journey. This was not addressing day-to-day needs like love, money, that kind of stuff. And I had to read it a few times. There was always something I just didn't quite understand, and I couldn't quite determine if this was, hoodoo or voodoo. Now that I'm further along in my path, I get it a little bit better. It's definitely hoodoo. And the snakes and the Great One refers to the snake that Marie Laveau was said to have as a familiar, for the lack of a better term, or like a guiding spirit almost. Legend has it that when Marie Laveau died, the snake that she carried with her, that spoke with her, that did work with her, slithered off on the dusty trail, never to be seen or heard from again. Almost like the snake wasn't a snake, Or should I say, the snake was more than a snake. I'm sure if I knew more about voodoo, I might be able to draw some parallels to that as well. But I don't know voodoo, and I'm not going to pretend like I do, and I'm not going to embarrass myself by trying. Man, I digress. I think what caught me off guard the most is that this was an initiation. When you are in spaces where hoodoos are, especially online spaces, or, for lack of a better term, like amateur hour at the local botanica, right? They say things like, there is no initiation, or you can't teach hoodoo, right? But clearly in this moment, Hurston was being crowned with a power that either by blood or by spiritual nature led back to the Conjure Queen herself. And it wasn't the type of initiation you may find nowadays, like a Wiccan initiation where you have to study for a year and a day before you're even let into inner circles. No, instead, You cannot be let into the inner circle until the spirits accept you. You can't even study until the spirit says you're worthy of finding understanding. And a slice of power has to be passed down to you. You cannot go to the altar without first crowning yourself with power. At first, I thought to use this initiation method as a sort of self-initiation, the 9 days of clean living and clean thoughts, followed by 3 days of fasting and crossing the stream. Yeah, I thought to replicate that, but as I kept going back to this text for inspiration, to gain understanding, not just this text, but the other initiation rites that Hurston describes in her book, Mules and Men, I realized that to replicate this would be futile. This initiation had everything to do with Turner and the College of Hoodoo Doctors that were welcoming Hurston into their ranks, right? Turner saw something in Hurston and was willing to invest in her, even if she was his last hoodoo doctor to pass the right off to. Furthermore, I can't self-initiate, right? Because in this context, initiation means to welcome in or pass down power from one worker or the patron spirit of a worker to another, right? And that's not something that I have access to. And to be fair, I decided long ago that I didn't want to find my magic in that manner, right? That I didn't want to seek a single teacher, that I wanted to have community as my teacher, that I wanted to talk to my living legends, that I wanted to find it in the folklore. Like I wanted to approach my magic, my understanding of hoodoo a little differently, right? Again, like I said from the very first episode, I never claimed to be the super powerful worker, right? I'm just engaging in the culture of hoodoo and talking to you. And I decided long ago that that's how I wanted to navigate this magical space, right? That I wanted to navigate it through story, through talking to my living legends, through finding myself spiritually, right? So instead of replicating this, I found myself pulling out the core tenets and using it in my work. Hurston said, the crown without preparation means no more than a college diploma without 4 years of study, right? Like initiation or not, you have to put the work in to see the results. So that's the fasting and testing your gangster before undertaking heavy spiritual work, right? And baby cousin, I'm in the middle of it now, preparing for this road opener ritual I do at the end of every year. Like I'm sitting with myself, removing distractions, striving to hear my own spirit, striving to break these bad habits and these bonds and these addictions that I have with, with sugar, with convenience, all of those things. And even if that takes me, to a place that I cannot describe to someone without sounding crazy. Like even if sitting with myself in meditation and contemplation leads to having such a profound understanding of myself, a fleeting moment as it even is, that if I were to describe it to someone, they would look at me like I was crazy. Once I saw myself, child, I'm going to tell you guys one. The first year that I did this open road ritual and I was preparing for it with the fasting, the testing of the gangster, the preparation, the whole deal, before crowning myself with power to do the actual ritual, I saw myself as a tree. And in the cracks of the bark, I could see my skin and like my blood vessels. I could see the blood pumping through the tree. I was both looking at the tree, like tracing its roots, and I was the tree. And I knew for sure once I had come out of that meditation, out of that trance, that I had seen my own spirit. Like I saw the shape that my spirit was in, and how much work needed to be done in order to get this tree healthy again and to maintain it and to keep it growing strong and thriving. And even now, as I say it out loud, I said it out loud to Big Sis years ago, and even now saying it out loud to you guys, it doesn't make sense, right? What I just said doesn't make any sense. It sounds like a fever dream, and yet in that moment, it was so profound, and it has shaped how I worked moving forward, right? So yeah, I took inspiration from the pre-work she had to do going into her initiation, the 3 days of fasting, the 9 days of preparation, the getting herself right before she undertakes this journey of finding power, right? And of course, before I start any work, I do as my grandmother did to my uncle when she wanted to remove disturbing spirits. I do what Hurston said had to happen before you could start any spiritual work. I crown myself with power. For Hurston and Turner, that's the power of the great one, right? The power of the one that Laveau worked with. For my grandmother, that's the power of Christ, right? For me, that's oil on my head from forehead to the nape of my neck and from ear to ear, and crowning myself with the powers of life and death, the universal forces that keep existence in balance, the universal forces that I touched and reached for when I was both at my lowest and when I was trying to pull myself out of the pain I was in. And I would not say that I ever self-initiated, right? Like, even though I'm drawing inspiration and even though I'm taking what I've read plus, what I was learning and blending it all together to create a style of work that works for me, I would never say that I self-initiated, because I don't think that's a possibility for me. I think that to initiate, you have to have someone welcome you into their power, someone to teach you how to access that power, someone to help you navigate the occult and how that particular teacher or group practices the occult. Like, that's initiation in general, right? Like Turner and teaching Hurston the Marie Laveau routines and his own work that he came up with, right? That's initiation. Hurston had to learn from him, had to get her power from where he gets it from, right? To be welcomed in, to share blood with the other hoodoo doctors in her ranks, right? With the drinking of the blood and the wine, and had to be welcomed into that group so that way she could learn, right? I don't have that. But I will say that once I understood, once I really felt the weight of what my magic could do, and I understood the power of the ancestral spirits behind me and the earthly spirits at my fingertips and the universal spirits that are always in play, I wrote down my own petition. It was so long ago, I can't even remember exactly what I said, but it was before I started keeping a field journal, that I know, right? But I must have poured myself onto the paper. And I remember writing it like it was a story, like I was the character of a story. Then I burned it. I burned the paper, and I took my then very swollen body, broken spirit, and headed into the woods where I found a crossroads and a footpath, and I scattered the ashes of that petition to all four corners, right? I don't remember saying anything or even asking for anything. At that moment, I just committed myself to my work, to my magic, to my hoodoo, Not nearly as dramatic as slitting the throat of a black sheep, but profound to me nonetheless. Okay. You have made it to the part of the podcast where I take a question or a comment or a trend or whatever from online, and I read it or address it. Um, this week, I'm actually going to talk about a question I found about last week's topic, which was road openers. The road open episode was like 47 minutes, and it was longer than that before I edited it down. So I didn't get a chance to read that question. So I thought I would read it here. Okay. The question goes a little something like this. It says, "Hey y'all, I want to do a road opener blockbuster work, but I saw something where it says you should do uncrossing work first. Is this true? I'm still learning, so I need advice. Can you be critical, but please don't be condescending? Like, can you be raw, honest? Just don't put me down in the process. LOL." Sure. So, whether you are doing a road opener like how I do, and it's like a big ritual thing at the end of the year, or you're doing like a 3-day thing because you need to unblock a path or pave a way, for a job, love, whatever, during the middle of the year, whenever you need it. Yeah, I would say that you should uncross first. So, road openers could be classified as a removal, I suppose, in that they do highlight obstacles or remove obstacles from your path. But if you are still spiritually carrying whatever it was that you were walking with before, as you tried to traverse this cleared path, you've solved the outside problem, but not the inside problem, right? Like it's like putting on brand new clothes, but keeping on the same old stanky underwear for a week. You feel what I'm saying? So you need to uncross first, or at least I say need to. You don't need to do anything. You should uncross first. So that way you're stepping onto this new path ready and able before traversing. So as a part of my road opener, going into it, I do 3 days of a coffee spiritual bath. It's with coffee and lemon. strong coffee. So you might hear that coffee is meant to speed work up, right? Because of the caffeine. I don't know where that came from. I don't disagree with it. I don't agree with it either. Sure. If that's how you want to use coffee. From what I've read and what I have been exposed to, I've always used coffee as an uncrosser, like as a remover, right? And lemon cleanses, right? So coffee and the lemon and a bath, and then I scrub down. Now, I'm not making a fresh pot of coffee every time. I usually make one really nice, strong pot of coffee, and then take those grounds, break those grounds up into 3 parts, and then use those grounds to scrub down with. It's nice. It feels good. It's good exfoliant and it smells good. And also I feel spiritually uncrossed afterward. The first time I did that, I also paired it with an uncrossing candle, and it was some pretty powerful shit. It was pretty powerful. To the point where the candle like popped. It wasn't a 7-day glass candle. It was like a pillar. It was like a freestanding pillar candle. And it like, as I'm watching it burn, I'm reading the wax. I'm like, I don't think I need to do this anymore. I think by day 2, I was done. It was done. The work was done. There was like a waterfall coming off the side, and it was like splitting down the middle. And so I feel like between that and the coffee bath, I probably did a little much, I was going overboard. But it's still one of my go-tos to uncross is either a coffee bath or a hyssop bath. If you want something to uncross with that you probably have in your house. So yeah, before you go into a road opener or a blockbuster, whether that's a huge ritual or just, you lighting a candle, whatever, you should definitely uncross first. Yes. Okay. The second question is a little more on topic. for this week. The second question says, greetings. I would like to know who agrees that you can divine without being initiated. So I bring this up because I like this question, I should say, because this question specifically, even though it seems so simple of a question, is specifically talking about like other ATRs, right? It's talking about the Lakumi and the Lawa and the whatever's and the whoever's and the all those divine beings that require a cultural context, and either you have to be initiated in to understand deeply, or you need to visit or be the client of someone who is initiated in, right? Those ATRs have certain rules you should follow, and I think that those rules need to be followed, and you should not participate in voodoo, Lakumi, Ifa, unless you are also participating in those cultural rules and traditions. However, hoodoo is not that way. Yes, there are hoodoo initiations. Yes, you can be initiated under a teacher or a community and welcomed in, and you share in the same school of practice as that teacher or community. However, to divine, the ability to see beyond, in hoodoo is treated as a skill or a talent. It's not something that you can only have unless you were taught, or trained by someone else. Either you have this skill and talent or you do not. So I said before, if you're in hoodoo, I think it was the hoodoo for beginners episode, that you need to have some sort of divination tool, right? When you do work, like mercury dimes, like a pendulum, like playing cards. However, not everyone is going to take to everything. Not everyone can see or divine in the same way. So you either need to find a way that you have a talent for, or you need to go to someone who can do it. Regardless, you do not need to go through some sort of initiation rite or work under someone for a while in order to be able to do this. It's just a talent you have, right? It's just a skill you've honed. So for my workers, for my hoodoos out there, community workers or otherwise, when you see a question like that, when you see a question that says, is it true you have to be initiated in order to divine? I want you to know that they're not talking to you. They ain't talking to you. Yes, there is initiation in hoodoo. However, that initiation has everything to do with how you work, not about your skill set. And in hoodoo, the ability to divine is a skill. It's a talent, okay, that you have. It's not something that a teacher can tell you or teach you. All right, we've made it to the end of the podcast. Thank you guys for staying with me for as long as you have. Before we get out of here, cousin, I want to let you know that you deserve the world, okay? Initiated or not, your magic is special. Your magic propels you forward. Your magic, your hoodoo, when centered well in your life, can be a cushion to just the absolute blah life can be. And whether you want to find a teacher and go through initiation with them, or if you just want to go to the crossroads and commit yourself to your practice, I want to let you know that if you call for your blessings, cousin, they will come to you. I'll see you guys next time.